NSFlip has built into it the capability to use some sophisticated context to allow code to be customizable in an effective way. So what I want to do, show you, we took in the last video, a pretty simple file and customized it to just allow somebody to create different rules. But let's look back at our diffs. That was for ESLintRC. Let's look now at the README file and we'll see a different story. There's going to be a requirement for adding more. So I want to take you through how you add more sophisticated changes using context. Plus, in README, we're going to have to deal with using a language that doesn't have the same delimiters for comments because Markdown is different. First of all, set file to README. Let's look at the differences. Now you can see that there are actually a lot of differences. How are we going to be able to handle that? They're going both ways. As a matter of principle, if they're going both ways, we're going to have to make changes to our template until all the differences are in one direction. So that's our goal. What is going on with the README file? Well, Oakleaf generates a README file for you. Remember that Oakleaf creates for us a hello command automatically to serve as a starter for us. In our sample code, we had pull and push commands. So what's happening here actually is that the documentation is being generated for different commands in our two versions. So for us to make our sample have the same code as our code, we're going to have to change the way that it's being generated in such a way that we can handle this. Let's look now, README file that we want, which is in Projectory. There are a lot of badges. It's what they're called in NPM. For the most part, there's some stuff that's been generated from the information in the package.json file, and that information is being used to generate a bunch of badges and stuff like that. Then there is the table of contents, which is generated automatically. You can see the Oakleaf delimiters inserted in there, and they inserted at the beginning and end of usage and at the beginning and end of commands. And that's why everything is different, because after all, we have different commands. So let's deal with this ourselves. What we're going to have to do is mark this up in such a way that everything makes sense. On top of that, it should be explained that we cannot use our typical delimiters because, as you can see right here, if you look on the right there, you can see that everything here is being shown because comments are different in Markdown. So what do we do here? Figure out how we can put in comments in general. Let's go to making files customizable, and the end has a section that talks about languages with different comment delimiters. So Markdown is shown as one such example. You have to use one of a few types of comment sections, and this one is preferred by many people as being the most independent of platforms. Let's use this version. What you have to be able to do is insert within them whatever it is that you want to have showing in your comment. We're going to follow the exact same sequence as we did with ESLintRC. We're going to copy that file from Projectory into Standard. Again, it's a root level file, so we don't need to create any directories in Standard. We need to append HBS at the end. We need to open it up to edit and to close the other ones so that we don't get confused. We'll close this as well. Okay, so now here we are looking at a file with things that we're going to have to generate. Now I need to start by inserting into it a command that identifies the file. Notice that I don't need to change. In config, .md files are already registered as potentially custom, so that's not a problem. But I need to insert the NS file inside of here. Be forewarned, there are limits to what you can put into one of these comments, and those limits are explained down in here. One problem is we're going to have to use custom start and custom end instead of using just the custom option that I showed, because if we did custom, then the entire custom region would be inserted inside of a markdown comment section, so it would just not show up, and we don't want that. Here's what we can do. I want to introduce the concept of sections. You can put a start section and an end section anywhere that you want it, and of course the names have to match and all that, but what that does is it designates an area that allows your user to be able to replace that entirely if they want with their own version and be able to continue to regenerate. Whatever they put into their version is going to be what is maintained. So the difference between that and a customized location is a customized code location is that with customized code locations, they can put what they want and it's not going to interfere with any kind of updates. If you regenerate with a replaced section, you're potentially going to lose out on changes to that section that were made by the template designer in creating a new template. For that matter, if it's a dynamic section and you're generating data, there are times when you will lose out by having your own version. What I'm going to do right now, first of all, is just create for myself a little empty markdown comment that I can reuse as needed. Let's see if we can start by creating a section. I want to create a section, first of all, for the whole beginning. We'll call it the introduction. And intro. You know what? Let's just see what that looks like already. Let's try regenerating and just make sure that we're generating what we think we're generating, because there are a few new things here and it's possible that I made a mistake. Let's look at the generated coding, see how it's looking. Here's the README that's being generated. Okay, so far, the main thing I was concerned about is everything looks clean. We don't have any problems based on this. Let's see, you see that the information on the file was correctly generated here. That's good. And we have this start section intro and end section intro. It should be possible for somebody to replace the section. And you can see how to do that in the documentation that talks about how to create customizable code. But right now we have created a section that means that someone can replace this. Now let's deal with the contents of the section. We have stuff that we would like to generate for them. We could just make it all custom, but that would mean that they would be on their own. The ideal here is to make it to do as much for you. That's the idea of a template, right? So what we want to do, be able to have it generate trajectory, but we don't know what trajectory is. Now it's time to learn a couple things. First of all, I just should mention that we're using handlebars, and you need to know how handlebars works. It is a very simple language. Here's the language guide. You can search handlebars, you can find out about this, you can read this, or there are many tutorials available, but you are going to have to know the basics, including partials and helpers. And so in effect, probably the best introduction to it will be just learning this, and you can do what you'll learn from there. But basically, handlebars has what is called context, things that you can pass in. In this case, first name and last name are defined as part of a context. So a template is passed in context and generates what it needs to from the context. There's a lot of context that's built into NSFlip, and you can check out handlebars in NSFlip to find out all about it. You also will be told about where you put partials and helpers, and you'll see we're going to create those as well. So context exists. We have some general things, namely we have something called names that allows you to take various versions of the name that you're given for a particular component, and I haven't gotten into that yet because it's not so relevant with standard files. What I want to show you is there's also file info talking about the file itself, and in fact the generated code is using that. Up in here, this is the file info. In fact, we do have a component name, by the way. We could use name. The name is readme.md, but it's not very relevant. We have some general info here, which includes whatever it is that a template writer tells somebody in their README that you should be installing. When you create a template in your own README, you should give information to someone who uses it and tell them this is what you need to put into general, and then you can actually use it. But in addition, general.json shows the contents of the package.json file wherever you are. There's other things here as well. For static and dynamic context, there's other things added that you can use. But for right now, let's take advantage of general. So we need to be able to insert in, instead of trajectory, we need to be able to insert in here general.json.name. And that should generate the name properly. Let's try it and see. We generate, and we then look back at the README and see now trajectory is appearing in two places. That's because we've generated it. Now, this should also be in our package JSON. The reason that, let me show you the package JSON of trajectory, which is what we're trying to be. And you can see that there is a description that was added in when we created it with Oakleaf. And I was skipping that step for speed when I created mine. But if I had I put in a description, it would have shown up. Actually, let's copy from the one that we want into here. So the one that we want. And then next time we run Oak Cliff, we'll just have to remember to generate that. Okay, let's close that. We might need this. Let's leave this open. In here, let's use description. And that should generate our description for us. You see that it's appearing twice, the same identical code. That's because one of them was hard-coded and the other one we generated. We now are generating the name and description. We now have to take care of these badges. The badges contain references to Projectory and to Yizya, and we need to go into our package JSON and find out what we've got. Here we have in repository, we have Yizya Projectory. Let's go back into our README HBS file. Let's replace anything with this with that, and that hopefully will already make life a little simpler. Now let's do for Projectory, and let's do name again. And here I'm going to probably replace one at a time to be just sure that there's nothing weird. Yeah, okay, we can do this. We're going to end up replacing that anyway. Okay, let's try calling that regenerate again and see whether it's correctly generating what we need. These are the same as before. I don't know if you noticed, but the important thing is what we see over here. Package Projectory, Yizya Projectory. It looks right. We now have created a section that gets generated automatically. And that's pretty cool. Now, if we want to, just to finish that section, let's insert into it a nice custom area. And for this, you just kind of have to guess what your user is going to want. I'm guessing that, like, we can call this after description. Then they can put whatever they want in there. So here we have the description, then we have after description. What we've done now is we've created a pretty decent section that is completely based on the context to provide what we need specifically for each application. So that's pretty cool. And in the next video, we can talk about how to go ahead and add other sections and make it a robust file. Basically remove the differences between code and sample.